If you're hunting for a speaker that will sit in your living room, play the movies you love without making you feel like you're in a lab, and actually give you something you won't regret paying for, that's the mindset I was in when I started looking at floor standing options. The fear of splurging on a set that sounds great on paper but ends up being a handful to integrate, or worse, ending up as an eyesore in the corner, is real. I'd already watched a few best-of videos and read some forum threads where people warned about oversized cabinets that need a massive amp, or tiny woofers that just can't keep up with the bass cravings of modern soundtracks. I wanted something that felt reliable, easy to live with, and truly worth the money, not just a long list of specs that sound impressive until you plug them in. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Klipsch RF7 III is a floor-standing speaker that tries to strike that balance. It's the third iteration of the RF7 line, and while the marketing material focuses on the all-new 1-inch titanium compression driver and the dual 10-inch cerametallic woofers, the real question is how those pieces behave in a typical home setup. I spent a few weeks testing the speaker in a 25 square meter room with a fairly modest receiver, and here's what I learned. First off, the most noticeable change is the bifurcated cabinet. It's not just a design flourish, the two chambers aim to keep the mids and highs clearer by separating them from the booming low frequencies. In practice, this means you get a clean vocal presence that doesn't get muddied by the bass. If you're the type who watches a lot of dialogue-heavy shows, think dramas, talk shows, or podcasts, this separation translates into an easier listening experience. You'll hear that, yeah, I'm on the third floor line without straining, even when the scene switches to an action-packed chase. The dual 10-inch cast basket woofers are a double-edged sword. On one hand, they deliver a respectable punch that fills a medium-sized room without needing a subwoofer. I played a bass-heavy track from the Dark Knight soundtrack, and the low end held its own, pulling the floor gently without rattling the windows. On the other hand, the sheer size of those drivers means the RF7 III demands a bit of breathing room inside the cabinet. In a cramped apartment or a studio where the back wall is within a foot or two, the speaker can sound tight or overly boomy because the internal air pressure doesn't have enough space to settle. So, if you live in a tight space, consider placing the speakers a bit forward from the wall or opting for a smaller model. One of the hidden trade-offs is the 9090 compressed molded rubber Tractrix horn. It's designed to project sound forward efficiently, which is great when you have a dedicated listening spot. In my tests, moving the speaker a few inches to the left or right of the center line didn't dramatically change the soundstage, but pushing it too far off-center resulted in a slight lean towards the side you placed it on. This isn't a deal-breaker, but it does remind you that the RF7 III works best when you intend to create a fixed sweet spot rather than a truly omnidirectional setup. If you frequently rearrange furniture or host parties where people sit all around, you might notice a dip in the surround immersion compared to a more dispersed speaker design. Another practical point is the dual Tractrix ports. They serve to smooth the transition between the woofers and the rest of the frequency range. The result is a more seamless bass roll-off, which is helpful if you're not planning on adding a subwoofer. However, the ports also make the cabinet slightly heavier. The speakers sit solidly on the floor, and I didn't have to worry about them wobbling, but the added weight can be a hassle if you need to move them for cleaning or rearranging. You'll likely want a sturdy pair of speaker stands or a dedicated spot that won't require frequent shifting. Who should buy the RF7 III? If you're a home theater enthusiast who wants a single speaker that can handle both cinematic impact and clear dialogue, and you have a room that can accommodate a sizable floor-standing unit, this is a solid candidate. Audiophiles who enjoy the classic Klipsch musical sound, bright highs, punchy mids, and a bit of that signature Klipsch splash on the lows will feel right at home. The speaker also pairs nicely with a decent AV receiver that can drive its 8 impedance without clipping, meaning you don't need to break the bank on a massive amp, but you do need a competent one. Who should skip it? If you live in a small studio apartment where the walls are practically touching the speaker, the RF7 III might be overkill and could cause unwanted vibrations. Likewise, if you prefer a more subtle, neutral sound signature, something closer to a reference speaker rather than the forward-leaning Klipsch character, then other brands might suit you better. Lastly, if you're looking for a speaker that